story you're sharing with that person is not the totality of who you are today. In other words, while you're sharing a story that many people define themselves with that story, say the negative thing or the positive thing, therefore when they're in the front of someone, instead of allowing that person to know who they are now, it's based on old stories. So part of this workshop is about, first I'm going to take you down the more psychological, maybe even darker path of just kind of understanding those deeper aspects of ourselves where the insecurities are. Secondly, I want to bring it to more light to where you can understand it better. And then 3 is to be able to connect like who you are, the relationships you want to attract to your spiritual path. And then also give you some tools with that. So I'm going to take you down that path tonight. So the first step here was just being aware of that story that you tell yourself. That you are always doing some type of story in your head, whether it's conscious or not, of who you are. And most of the time it's something usually negative, what you're not. Or when you are in front of someone, in the back of your mind, you feel as though there's some secret, if they knew that about you, that they would not like you, so you hold back. You even think, I will not tell this person until maybe the 3rd date that I'm still married. Or something like that. So there's certain stories that we create, and what ends up happening, eventually we have to show up. Or what ends up happening is that it becomes so hard to be that person that we first were in that moment. And what is interesting, I have 2 ways of looking at this, and that is, people often say that it was really good in the beginning. There's many reasons for that. There's some chemical reasons for that, what's happening in our body. But 2 is that we show better aspects of ourselves. In other words, we're kind of selling ourselves. But you only can do that for so long. And then 2, when you become more comfortable with someone, for guys, maybe they pass one next to the person, or maybe a woman might just openly just start sharing how she really feels and starts crying, whereas the first 2 months she's like, seems really together. I mean, there's certain things that we go through. It doesn't mean that you show up to a date. Like I remember this, and this happens with me because maybe I elicited just my personality, but I remember, I don't know, like 5, 6 years ago, I remember being on Match.com or something like that, and I was on a date, and I just met the person at Whole Foods, and I said, so the common generic question is, how long have you been doing it? She said, well, just a couple months. And I said, well, how long have you been single? And she said, well, technically about a year, but I've been still sleeping with my ex-boyfriend up until 2 months ago, and he actually met someone else. And she starts, and she starts crying, and she says, maybe I'm just not ready. I'm like, you think so? And I just went, wow. I said, you know, you probably are not, and it's good that you and I met. I handed her my card. No, but it was that experience, and it happened, and so we show up. We're always that. There's something on that handout also that goes to different phases of where we are at. There's a part that I want to take us to. I was going to later on, but I'm going to do that now. That way we're all present. And there's a part of the handout that talks about embodying the God and Goddess that we truly are. And what that means is that all of us judge ourselves by the way that we look, by how we think people might perceive us, how many have just text message someone, you don't hear a response, and you think immediately maybe you said it wrong, and you text again to let the person know what you really meant. Correct? We've all have done that. So that's a prime example, because it's like we do not want to be put in a doghouse. And secondly, insecurities come up because all of us are still boys and girls, and we want to be liked. It just comes down to that. No matter how evolved the person is, that I think that we all desire to want to be liked. Now that shouldn't define us. That's not something we should search for, but just be aware. Why would you not want to be liked? Okay? So if you are going outside and if you are approaching people, and this workshop is not just for people who are single, but it's people who are in present relationships. And so if in your mind you're thinking, my partner is never going to change, what you're doing is you're putting that person in a box so he or she will never grow. And you might say, well, historically, this is just the way it is. But also, historically, you have been participating in a certain way by your belief system. Therefore, he or she might be participating that way because how you approach him or her. So you have to show up differently to see any change. And if you start showing up differently, come from more of that God self, that part of yourself that is secure and is this vibrant being, then you really can see things differently. It's